Algernon, thanks for being here and welcome back to New Mexico in Focus.
Nice being here, Jeff.
You have a new job since the last time we had you on the show. You are covering southern New Mexico now for the Albuquerque Journal. It was in the course of that work that you came to do some reporting on this mass shooting at Young Park in Las Cruces. I want to kind of start from like 30,000 feet. What is an unsanctioned car show?
These are very popular get-togethers where young people, middle-aged people find a space where they can show off their lowriders, they can show off cars that they've modified to be really loud or to backfire on command. There's sort of one foot in that tradition of car shows where, you know, the Mexican car shows where they like to bounce and things like that. And but these are rowdier. There's a lot of spinning out, doing donuts. There's tricks. Sometimes there's drag racing. They like to leave marks on the pavement. They like to raise a lot of smoke. And then what is also popular is that people will bring guns, and their rifles will be mounted with laser scopes and lights to aim them into the smoke and make lighting effects that people like to video and post on TikTok and what have you.
Gotcha.
And so these are crowded gatherings. They're really rowdy. They're really loud. The neighbors hate them because they raise a lot of smoke and a lot of noise. And it's scary because people like to get really close to the cars that are doing donuts and film them. And people get really close to cars that are not really in control.
Yeah, some of the video made me incredibly nervous just from watching. So it was at one of these kinds of events where this shooting took place. Walk me through the sequence of events that sort of led up to the exchange of gunfire.
What we know is that right around 10 o'clock, there seems to have been an argument between two groups of young people. Witnesses described one of these factions as the Rivas brothers. And it's not clear how many people brought guns out or what led to that moment. People were enjoying a car doing donuts one moment, and then there are these gunshots that ring out, and the moment is captured on video, and you'll notice that there isn't really a reaction right away because backfire is pretty common at these things. But the pops are coming rapidly, and pretty soon people start running. And what appears to have happened is that 4 people pulled out semi-automatic pistols and just started firing lots of shots into a very crowded place. At the height of this event, some people say 200-300 people were gathered in this parking lot at this city park. And people just ran, taking cover, trying to get out of the park as fast as they could, running in every direction. And then the shooters climbed into a car and sped away from the scene pretty quick.
You got your hands on some federal search warrants connected to this mass shooting. What did we learn from those documents?
So federal agents working with local police were looking for DNA to match the people who had been arrested with the guns that had been recovered. And so the search warrant reveals some elements of the investigation that they pretty quickly tracked down from talking to witnesses who may have been involved. And then they soon were following a car the next morning and saw what they allege was one of the now defendants in the case trying to get rid of some of the weapons in a dumpster outside of a residence. They also went into the residence, and some more evidence was found there, another gun. So far, I think 5 weapons have been recovered, and as well as a jacket that was matches a jacket that was seen in some of the many mobile phone videos of the incident. And so through that we learned that there are 3 juvenile defendants who had had some previous interactions with law enforcement, some previous complaints that had gone through the juvenile court system.
What do we know about the people who were killed?
So 3 teenagers were killed in this incident. 15, I should say, additionally were wounded, and all of them were wounded either by gunfire or shrapnel. The 3 killed were these high school students in Las Cruces. One was 16, one was 17, one was 19. And as I say, 15 people who were wounded and moved to various hospitals and went to El Paso. And then we have 4 fairly young people, a 20-year-old defendant, as well as 2 17-year-olds and a 15-year-old who have been charged in the case so far.
What are they charged with, and where do the cases stand at this point?
So they all have 3 open counts of murder in the first degree, as well as conspiracy charges. And the investigation's ongoing. There may be more charges to follow. In the federal search warrant, for instance, there was mention of the fact that the shooting took place about 350 feet away from a public school. And so there may be some more charges to follow depending on what else we learn. So a 20-year-old, Tomas Rivas, who is in custody, and 3 juveniles, Gustavo Dominguez, Josiah Ontiveros, and Nathan Rivas, who appears to be the younger brother of Tomas. And they're all in custody. The 3 juveniles are in juvenile custody ahead of further proceedings. The district attorney, Fernando Macias, has indicated that he's going for a grand jury indictment, and he's going to try them as adults based on just how serious this crime was.
Gotcha. So if I'm doing my math right, between the 4 alleged shooters and the 3 people who are dead, all but 2 of them are children under 18 years old. This shooting took place on the second to last day of a legislative session in Santa Fe, in which a huge amount of the debate, although very little passage of actual legislation, was aimed at crimes committed by children. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, of course, has admonished lawmakers for not passing those bills. There's almost certainly going to be a special session when we see some of those bills come back. How is this case affecting statewide politics?
I mean, the timing of it was uncanny. The severity of it, I mean, Las Crucens are traumatized by this in that it's one of the highest mass casualty events people have seen, certainly in Las Cruces, and I think statewide, in decades. And it happened in the closing hours of a legislative session where the governor was already indicating that she had frustration, that she had wanted to see a lot more legislation related to crime, and especially penalties related to crime. And she was getting pushback that some of the measures she supported did not sufficiently show interest in rehabilitation and diversion, although she does say that she supports those things too, but she did want to see penalties. She even wanted to see a younger threshold for trying kids as adults, and wasn't getting those measures from the legislature. So then this happens right at the opportune time, and as they're closing out this legislative session with all of that pressure. And so that was the impetus for teasing a special session. I'm certain it's going to happen, and we're going to be hearing a lot about Las Cruces.
Yeah, I think that's right. Let's talk a little bit about local reaction for a minute. You had just mentioned that people in this state haven't seen a mass casualty event like this in a long time. There was a particular piece of context in one of the stories that you wrote saying that the city hadn't been rocked by this kind of violence since the bowling alley massacre 35 years ago. I wonder, how is the community taking this based on folks you've been talking to?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite, this never happens here, but this happens here rarely. And for Las Crucens, especially Generation X and older, people remember the 1990 shooting event, sort of gang style, looked like to be execution style shootings at a bowling alley. That bowling alley is actually not far from the park. And today it's all boarded up. It's been closed for years. It's all boarded up. People still leave flowers. The 35th anniversary passed just recently. And people still leave flowers at that spot. It's a very living memory that this happened to us, and it happens to our kids. And notably, this had 3 casualties, 3 fatalities, and again, kids. And I think that's the part that's really sticking out for people. There's also frustration among the community that lives around that park because people tell me that they've been raising concerns about that park for years. There have been lots of minor crimes there. There have been a lot of car shows there. Sometimes the activities with the cars actually spill out onto Walnut Street. And when asked about why not police events like this harder, Las Cruces Police Chief Jeremy Story points to a lack of resources, just a police force that's too taxed, that's always responding to emergencies, basically. And so it comes with the memories very fresh of previous incidents, as well as a lot of frustration about just wondering whether enough is being done to keep the community safe now.
Let's dig into Story just a little bit here as we get toward the end of our conversation. What are some of the specific complaints he's got in terms of the resources for his department, and what are some of the things that the city says it's going to do in the aftermath of this shooting?
Yeah. So the city has funded the police department for 220 positions, and Story says he's got less than 190 positions full. Police agencies across New Mexico, and especially in the South, where there are much poorer communities, municipalities of lower budgets, they're competing with the state police. They're competing with agencies in other states. I hear that complaint universally, that it's been hard to recruit good officers who can stay for the long term. Additionally, Jeremy Story has advocated strongly for technological resources, especially a real-time crime center that essentially conducts surveillance in areas of interest. More of the cameras that are sort of mounted permanently in places to kind of surveil what's going on in communities. And he's been a very cogent spokesperson and advocate for that. I imagine during a special session, we will be seeing his face in Santa Fe, as indeed we saw him go up there during the legislative session to advocate for more resources. Chief Story is also one who says that he wants to see more diversion. He wants to see more preventative stuff, and I think that's because when you have a smaller force without the resources you need, you want to try to address things before they become problems requiring a police response.
His ideas, whether that's the real-time crime center, which of course would be modeled after the one that we have here in Albuquerque, additional surveillance, those kinds of tools, how do those ideas land with the community? Or are his ideas resonating among residents down there?
A lot of people like that idea a lot. I think that people who like it envision it as a place that will be well-staffed and quickly responsive to situations before they occur. There is a contingent within the community that really likes to sort of emphasize public dangers. And there have been flashpoints in local politics on this that have affected the city as well as the county. A lot of focus on the unhoused population and a lot of focus on property crime as kind of harbingers of more violent offenses. The city, the department, of course, just saw its first in the line of death duty not very long ago. And that involved a person who was unhoused and appeared to be in need of behavioral health services and wasn't getting them. And a violent confrontation ended in the officer's death. And that has really, I think, kind of pitched the conversation in a certain direction. Although you also have community advocates and health professionals really trying to bring this back into a conversation about how do we help people who are in trouble? How do we get people into housing? How do we get people into behavioral health services where we're still rebuilding a whole system to deliver that kind of service, that mental health care, as well as what are we offering our juveniles? What are we offering young people to do? How are we engaging them and not just giving them things to entertain them, but how are we really engaging them with the community so that they have a sort of sense of public safety as well? And so which of those sort of stories is going to dominate is still kind of an open question.
Algernon, thank you for making the drive up. I am excited to continue reading your coverage on this and other matters in the Albuquerque Journal. Thanks again for being here today.
Anytime, Jeff. Thanks.